Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the MSP Initiative, MSP Talk. We're going to get through the housekeeping like we normally do at the beginning of all of these sessions, and then, we'll get into some good stuff. So buckle up. MSPinitiative.com. You will see sessions as a tab under MSPinitiative.com, which take you to our podcatcher, our YouTube page, and just a listing of every single one of these sessions, like the one we're recording right now. So you want to go backwards, like, share, subscribe, forward, download, all here for you in whatever format feels comfortable. Don't watch and drive at the same time. Trust me, not a good idea. Thank you for everyone that came out to our second MSP Community Minds of the year. We had one in Nashville earlier this year. Then we just finished up MSP Community Minds last week in Denver. Wow. That was awesome. Thank you to all of our panelists. These are MSPs that took time to come out of their businesses and talk to us about many things. And then our workshop holders who also taught us on many things 2 hours at a time. Of course, thank you to all the co-sponsoring vendors that made this happen. We appreciate you. We will be planning future MSP Community Minds into 2025. Stay tuned, early days, but we want to keep the format going. We like it, and I think you like it too. So thank you for everyone that joined us. But then that brings us to what we're probably better known for, our MSP community block parties, to which there are 4, not 1, not 2, 4 left for the rest of the year. Here we go. PAX 8 Beyond in Germany, right? If you're headed to Berlin, then we want to see you. So on October 14th, which is the second night of the conference, we're going to bus everybody over to a cool beer-themed venue. So going along the theme of Oktoberfest in Germany, you will love this. So definitely register ahead of time. Can't wait to see you in Germany if you're headed there. Our first one there too, so kind of exciting. Then we turn around, then we head to Miami. So if you're headed to DattoCon in Miami, good news for you. You don't even have to leave the hotel where the conference is happening. We're on property on October 29th, second night of the event at 9:30. We will be at the famous Live nightclub on South Beach at the Fountain Blue. Again, register ahead of time. Did we mention that all of these are absolutely free for MSPs to join us at? Yeah, they are. So definitely check this out. Then we go to Orlando, the big IT Nation Connect in Florida. This will be November 6th, like it is the first night of IT Nation every year for the last 8 years. After the welcome reception and expo booth time, jump on a bus, head down the street, exactly 1 mile down the road. And we will be bringing you, for the first time, Flow Rider as our entertainment for this year's block party. That's right. You've heard them on the radio. You've seen them on MTV. You will have a live concert, absolutely free, on us and everyone else who's co-sponsoring. Come out, enjoy yourself. This is for you, the community. All you got to do is register ahead of time, or you got to get stuck registering at the door. And then lastly, we turn around because, we love airplanes here at MSP Initiative, and we are headed down to Sydney for the second time this year for DattoCon Sydney. So on November 12th, we're going to make a right out of the hotel venue, walk down the boardwalk, and we will be doing a block party for you guys down under, second time this year, as we bring our special flavor of party to you. So make sure to register as well for DattoCon Sydney. They are all there at mspinitiative.com under community block parties. Again, doesn't cost you anything other than registering, food, beverage, entertainment. It's all covered. So come down and enjoy yourself. We have some community offers. So if you see any deals on there that you might be able to take advantage of, feel free to do so. And our industry calendar goes all the way until the end of the year. We are officially in the time of the year called the Gauntlet. That's what we like to call it, where all of these events are happening in like a 90-day window. And so if you don't want to be home, you surely can be at a industry event and not home. So there's all the housekeeping. I got it all done in 6 minutes, now 7, which is a minute ahead of time. So there it all is, mspinitiative.com. So for the first time ever, we are bringing a new guest onto the podcast, Mike from Moovila. How you doing today, Mike?
Good. How are you? How you doing, George? I got a question. Are you attending all of those? You're going to have some serious frequent flyer miles if you're bouncing to all of those.
We race certain people in the industry, to figure out who gets the most airline miles at the end of the year. Funny enough, my colleague Alec usually beats me anyway, but we race different people from different parts of the community, different companies. Yes, I probably will be at all of those. Definitely frequent flyer miles. Although, Mike, once you get to know me a little bit better, you'll know that Chick-fil-A points are higher in my book than the airline. So
That's
take
amazing.
that for whatever.
Just not on Sunday. Yeah.
Just not on which as a guy who travels through airports on Sunday kind of kicks you in the butt.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Chica. Okay,
Psych. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm all down for the I used to, spicy chicken sandwich is like, in my opinion, the best thing on their menu. But I've been doing the 30 count grilled nuggets for some time now as my go-to. So if you're on the try and eat better kick, that is a thing. Not breaded nuggets, grilled nuggets, Chick-fil-A 30 count. It's a thing. It doesn't show up on the menu, but it is there. If you ask for it, they will give it to you.
30 count, you said.
30 count.
Yeah, there's a lot of grams of protein in that. That's good for working out, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I mean, as far as grilled chicken goes, it's pretty tasty, and like you can still do the sauces, right? Because some of the Chick-fil-A sauces, are a little bit, crazy, and I know some people like to like mix them around and create their own recipes. But like I said, easy for when you're on the go too, right? So
Yeah.
I digress. For every time we bring somebody new onto the podcast here, Mike, we usually like to just talk about you for a second and like your background, your journey into IT technology land, and then we can like turn into like, all right, now present day you're at Moovila, and we can learn a little bit about that too, and then we'll see how the conversation goes.
Yeah. So I can go way back, machine. Born and raised in Chicago, unfortunately in pain Bears fan, and once again, yet another season where it looks like they're going to be struggling again. But I got my start in tech, oh God, now 33 years ago. Started out working in IT consulting in Price Waterhouse. This is before they even merged and became PwC. And then after that, I had spun out my first business focusing on financial analytics for medical schools and medical universities. And at the same time, I actually started an MSP that served medical universities and businesses. And this was, excuse me, this is before there was such a thing as RMM, before there was such a thing as a PSA. And this is honestly, this was before the web was anything and a big deal. This is mid 90s, right? So
Wow.
This was in the land of break fix. And so I understood sort of the frustration and hell associated with managing in that environment. But had another business that the tech side of the business and the software side of the business grew and expanded on an analytics front. And we sort of grew. We had a business intelligence and analytics company, and that sort of took off. We wound down the MSP side of the business because that got pulled back into these medical schools and universities. They sort of brought that back in-house. And then, as I said, this analytics platform sort of took off, grew, sold that business in 2011 to Equifax. My CTO and I then spun this business out because we realized, there's a problem. Why in such an old, mature market like project management are people still surprised? Like, why is this happening? Why are people confused that projects are still late or delayed? That doesn't happen with spreadsheets or accounting software or word processors. Like, it just doesn't happen. And so something that's decades old, why does that happen? And we discovered a couple of really interesting, fascinating things and realized that and that's what drove the creation of this business. 2016 kind of forward now, looking at project and work management like a programming language. So we sort of said, hey, we really need to think about work like a programming language, and projects should be manifest like that. So you can debug it, analyze it, monitor it server side. You can also integrate automation, Internet of Things, human beings. This is before even the most recent AI push. We got in a big partnership with the heavy equipment manufacturer Komatsu probably 5 years ago, and they invested heavily into the platform because they wanted automated construction management. They have automated bulldozers and excavators, and they wanted to handle it from the software side. A couple of years ago, we had some folks from the MSP side come to us and say, hey, we're running into a lot of similar problems. We like what you guys are doing with this AI-driven automation and project management. Could you do this for us? And so they saw the platform, but they said, hey, but it's got to be integrated. It's got to be integrated to the PSA. Otherwise, we can't do double entry. So we as a business made a decision. Like I said, we've got this construction side of the business, and we're also in finance, manufacturing. And we said there looks to be a lot of need and pain in the MSP industry around projects, and that's certainly been kind of revealed in recent research. And so we made the decision to build the first integration with one of the large PSA players. That worked really, really well. And so now we've got the second one online, and the third, all the sort of major players that are out in space right now, and the third will be coming online shortly. So obviously, having ConnectWise and Halo and Autotask, having those platforms bidirectionally integrated is critical for the partners, because they'll manage that as single source of truth. But we solve a really big problem, which is bad project data. Bad project dates and data is a big problem in the industry, and it contaminates a lot of the business intelligence that these MSPs depend on. And I think that's probably a big reason why they came to us, was they were tired of the unpleasant surprise of, hey, how did we not know this? How did this happen? Our customer's angry. How did we miss this? So that's sort of that's a quick and dirty sort of history.
No, I love the history. That's awesome. I'm going to pick your brain on a couple of things before we get into like what you're solving for. So you actually lived through an early version of what we are seeing now, just 2 or 3 revisions down the road, right? A lot of MSPs started selling. Maybe they started a second business on the software side. So a lot of good companies in the sandbox in IT and MSP land spawned from MSPs who were like,
yep,
hey, we just don't find it out there. I guess we should build it. And then that turns into a product, right? And then obviously there's a lot of movement in our arena on all of those companies starting to get kind of gobbled up into larger conversations, right? So as a person that has started and sold now a couple of businesses, what is your advice for people in MSP land in terms of successfully starting and selling a company? I know that that's a big one. Maybe you have a couple of tips that come to the top of your mind, but you lived it. I don't want to open up the textbook and go sit in the classroom and learn.
Yeah.
What were a couple of things that you would walk away and say, had I known this the first or second time, I would have done it differently?
Yeah, so good question. I guess there are a couple of things that I would say. Getting people who care about the problem that you're working on is a 10x multiplier for who you're competing against. Meaning you can have a product and you could in the same category as others, and they could have literally 10 times as many people or 10 times as much money, even 100 times in some cases. And if you have a bright, intelligent, hardworking group, the ability to care about like that care factor, meaning, and I think where care comes into play, and I know this sounds subjective, is your ability to throw away good work to get to great work can be a big difference maker to get a larger organization. Because these really big organizations, George, look at technology. And it was funny because even after we were acquired, we saw this. They look at technology like and technology developers, supporters as fungible assets. You know what I mean? Fungible meaning, hey, 4 quarters or $1, it's the same thing, it's equally exchanged. They'll look at technology in many cases. Those senior leaders that don't come from technology will say, oh, we have to develop a new feature or we need new functionality. It sure seems like we could probably offshore this or nearshore this at a much lower rate. Let's do that. Let's ship it off to them. Let's get the product team to get a list of specifications to do that. And they could do that and they produce a mediocre product because for certain, whoever that developer is, working for a contract agency, offshore or nearshore, when they produce something good, hey, that's good. That's good. But good will not catch someone's attention. It has to be great. It has to be amazing. And so, you start your business and you're up till 2 or 3 in the morning and you go, that's not quite that makes a big difference. So don't underestimate the fact that getting people to care really, really matters and can make a massive difference in the quality of what you're delivering.
I subscribe to that. I think the founders of all of these companies are usually the person that's falling asleep on the keyboard, right? Like, and they're the ones like burning weekends, nights, holidays, all that stuff. I think the problem, and I don't know if you have a secret sauce to it, I've never found it, but how do you find people who are willing to do more than just another job, right? A 9 to 5. Hey, came in, checked out, did what I had to do. And, like to get those fanatical people in your company is not easy.
Yeah. Well, I think probably, and this was certainly not intentional, but over the years, when we would recruit people, I think more often than not, I would say, I don't know that you're going to want to come here. Like you, if maybe, it's a little, and I would sort of, and we would hit them with the, hey, this is a really intense place. We're trying to do a really, really hard thing. We're trying to compete against people who have 100 times as much money and 100 times as many people. And, now we've done this in the past and we've won, and it feels amazing when you do that, when you can overcome and you go, holy shit, we beat people who have 100 times as many. But that requires sacrifice, intensity, and caring. And if you're looking for a job to kind of just punch the clock and make some money, and that's fine. I said, we'd love to talk to you later, maybe when we have larger scale or a process, but right now, every dog on the sled, and I'm a dog on the sled too, we all have to be pulling really hard. Otherwise, there's no point. We're wasting our time. And maybe that's just too intense for some people. And so we get it if it's not. And that ends up attracting a certain kind of person who wants to be relevant. And we tell people, we're like, you'll be really, really relevant. You'll be really, really relevant. And if we're not all really relevant, then we die and we go away. End of story. And
as a guy from Philly, sounds like a Rocky story if I've ever heard one. You're kind of like punching up, right? You're going into the ring with the predetermined big guy, right? And you have a shot, a puncher shot to maybe, shock him, and disrupt and upset, right? And like, I love that, by the way. I breathe that as a guy who was born and raised in this area, but no offense to the statue and people come and look at it all the time. But that being said, the idea behind it is there. So no, that's great. I mean, delivering that message at the very, very beginning will surely turn people off that aren't interested in that, for sure.
And it does. And we say, look, there's nowhere to hide. Like, you won't be able to hide. And if it's on the tech side, I believe everybody, if you look at a normalized distribution, to the right Six Sigma, to the left Six Sigma, and I think every human being has been given some talents and some skills where they're really way better than everybody else.
It's true.
In the general population. It could be their ability to hit a small stick with a ball, that's coming very fast, and we'll pay them $30 million a year. It could be jumping, could be running, could be math, could be programming, analytics. But trying to find people who can self-select and go, hey, not saying egotistically, but I'm really good at this, and say, but also telling them, hey, if you're not, the other people on your team are, and it's going to be a bad experience for you. It's just going to be a bad experience. If you're willing to work really hard and make up that gap, like I said, and there is something about, in the beginning, I caught a lot of slack from my staff because they're going, you're scaring off good candidates. But inevitably, the really good ones would come back, because I do think, as a former coworker a long time ago said in a joke, and I'm not going to repeat the joke, but being relevant, is probably the most important thing, I think, in the human condition. Is we just want to be relevant. We want to be relevant to our families. We want to be relevant to friends, significant others. We want to be relevant to work, the community. And when we feel like we're gonna matter, and that someone cares about us mattering, that can really motivate people to kind of deliver more and kind of engage more. And that turns my crank. That keeps me going too, and to see people willing to do that.
So here's a good follow-up thought to this whole thing. At what point did that change, right? Like, did you hit a certain size, or was there a certain number of people in your company before, like, it kind of got more, like outside of that core fanatical group into a little bit more of a normal environment?
So in the last business where we got up to a couple hundred people, we were able to maintain that culture because we were so religious and diligent about sort of that core group. When someone would come in, and there was I think the book was called The No Asshole Rule. It was a book long time ago. And the one line that I remember from this that was important, that I just tell my staff all the time, is assholes hire assholes. So like, you have to not get any assholes in your business, because they breed it. And if you're really, really diligent about this, getting people who care about other people, right? Because having a compassionate workplace and making them understand, hey, your family's the most important thing. You're never going to be able to deliver consistent good work if you don't have support from your structure. So we want you to support your home structure, your family structure. That's the most important thing in the world to you. We love your dedication, your work, but you have to kind of having that structure and having everyone understand what those priorities are. Then now we never got up to thousands of people, so I can't tell you, does it break down after that? I don't know. But I will tell you that the organization that we went into that required us, the leader of that organization was managing thousands of people, and a huge that is on our board now, and someone I respect, a lot. And it was a good lesson to me, because that was always a question in my mind, George, was like, oh, like, it just seems like there's so many successful assholes out there, and it just seems like that's a precursor to like do this. And it kind of bummed me out, and it sort of depressed me for a long time until, we had been approached to get acquired by a bunch of companies, and a lot of them we said no to, because I went, there is no way we're going to subject ourselves to those people. Like, there's just no way we want to deal with that. And, this organization came along, and we met them, the CEO, the process, and they were all so ethically minded, supportive, and talking to the massive number of people in the organization, all really respected this leader. The guy's name's Dan Adams. And there were thousands of people. And I went, oh my God, like, he was managing a division inside this company of thousands of people. And he had managed other divisions. And every one of those divisions just went, the culture of the organization was really, really good. So I would say, I think it is possible. Now, are you going to have that really intense working with thousands of people? Probably not. Law of big numbers says, that's unlikely. I'm sure, some of the biggest name companies that we know and love today is super high tech and big that are large probably have some dead wood. But
you get to that point, I think that happens everywhere. You said something just a second ago that kind of piqued my interest, right? Like, in the sandbox, right? There's a lot, if you want money, it's there. Like, there is no lacking of it. And when I say money, right, like, not go to the bank, get a loan. Of course you can, but I'm talking about investors and VC and PE. Like, there's a line around the corner if you want it, right?
Yep.
But the part that you just mentioned is not like in the normal checklist, right? How do you get past the financial negotiation to the parts that aren't on paper, right? Like, what happens after this? Like, what happens to our people? What do you value? What's co-organization, dynamic look like? Like, these are the questions that often get lost. And then you're very, almost discombobulated or salty with the result of the unwritten part of what happens afterwards.
Yeah. Change is going to be challenging no matter what for people, right? And how do you, what is the culture you're going into? If it's not aligned, or it isn't close, or it has very different value systems, you're going to get a lot of defection. And if you depend on your people to continue to deliver that product, that's a problem, right? So you got to understand, and if you have a value system where you want that value to be realized by the acquiring company, all of a sudden that gets compromised. That was always my worry with some of these other organizations. I'm like, and they were offended. Like, why aren't you going to consider? And when we did sell, they got really upset that we didn't consider an offer from them because they were a partner. And, what I never told them was, you would never have gotten the value from us, because I know how you guys run your business. You don't want to say this to someone going, I've seen how you run your business. We've talked to your employees, understand your culture, and we would have lost half our business, half of our people. And that would have,
I'll be honest, I would have said it, but that's just me, right? We're super blunt here in North. Like, I would have been like,
you're from Philly. I'm from Chicago originally, so not as far off, but I think you have the luxury of going, hey, I'm from Philly. I say it like it is.
Now, a little Sopranos type delivery there. Yeah, listen, I think that and I've known a lot of people, especially in MSP land, who have sold and did very well financially. Like, they got more than they probably bargained for when it was all said and done. But when talking with those people, I think that their regret, if there is any, is, man, I was told all of these things at the negotiating table. It wasn't, it was all in passing. It wasn't in a document, and then it didn't happen. And then, what happened afterwards was not great.
Yeah. I had gotten great advice before even going through the process when we were doing it, which was basically, just remember, compromise is where nobody gets what they want. Like, a good deal, the deal will be a problem if you are ecstatic and you feel like you got everything you want, because in the end, it's going to feel lopsided by the acquirer, and then they're going to start to come in an onerous way or a resentful way. And obviously, if you feel like you got screwed, you're going to leave, be bitter. So you kind of want to get to this place where it feels a little like didn't get everything. It wasn't great. And that made a lot of sense to me. And I think that was the case, because certainly after the acquisition, there are plenty of people going, well, what about this? What about that? And, there's always tensions. And so you don't want to be,
It's like, that concept where everybody has a little bit of skin in the game, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not all imbalanced, right? So yeah, I've heard that too. So let's talk about the concept of, and no offense, right? Every 2 or 3 or 4 years, our industry, or just generally technology land, tends to come up with this new thing that they want to market, right? And so like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, like cybersecurity was on every billboard. And I'm not saying that went away. It's still surely up front and present. And then like what I used to believe was called machine learning turned into this AI moniker. And like now, like AI everything, right? Like everybody went to their, like I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, everybody just put the word cyber in front of their word and like said a security product. Now it's like everyone's like AI this, AI that. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, what exactly is AI in terms of a deliverable, like something I can see?
Yeah, that's a great question, George. And I think, especially in this industry, there's a lot of misunderstanding around what AI is, right? And what AI equals. So with the advent in the last, obviously, 12 to 24 months with LLMs, generative AI, and the neural nets and what those are producing at a general level, kind of this non-interpretive black box AI, which is really amazing and does a lot of cool stuff, right? I mean, it's undeniable what these large language models are doing and their ability to produce information. But that's one component of AI, right? Machine learning is another component. And before LLMs came along, everybody felt like ML equals AI and AI equals ML, which is also not the case, right? So there are expert systems, symbolic systems, heuristics learning. There's a whole category of technologies. There are categories of technologies that all roll up under the same umbrella as AI. It might not be as sexy as the generalized LLM AI, but as you go through this, so for us and our AI and our platform, we have very domain-specific sort of white box interpretable AI around something called the directed acyclic graph, right? So this is in graph theory using heuristic technologies, symbolic search algorithms to analyze what is structured work in the form of a directed acyclic graph against best practices, structural defects, process. We have a little bit of an ML component on existing projects and tasks, but this all rolls up under the umbrella. We have some customers, honestly, who look at it and they're like, well, that's not AI. I'm like, it's not a large language model, but it's AI. It's interpretable. And by the way, you don't want black box AI when you're trying to figure out if a project is late or there's a capacity problem. You want white box interpretable AI. And I understand that it's not the du jour of an LLM and neural nets, but when you look at the expert symbolic heuristic systems and the white box interpretable nature and once again, they're domain specific to be sure, and that's the issue, right? Is if you are willing to say, hey, there's a problem, there's a use case that we're trying to resolve, then you can, today, with today's tech and tools, you can produce an interpretable result that's augmented by that automation. And,
Sure.
and I've got a son who's getting his PhD at Berkeley in AI right now. And as they go through, you sort of hear, each successive transformation that they're going through in this process in the generative side. But also make no mistake, it is still black box, lacks interpretability. There's a lot of issues associated with that. So, but once again, George, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, like people are just sort of slapping AI on anything. Well, what does your AI mean? What does that even mean? What are you saying? What do you have a chat bot in there? And, we even rolled a lot of that stuff out and going, hey, we don't want to become part of the chatbot revolution. That's not what our AI does. It may be, like I said, outside the realm of the current sexy, what's going on with large language models, but we do have the benefit of producing a discrete interpretable result that human beings just can't do on their own. No human being can observe an entire portfolio of projects and tasks and work and everybody's calendars and schedules and their tasks. no human being can manage all that simultaneously and say, you're going to have a delay here, you're going to have a capacity conflict. Yeah, he's out with his mother's hip surgery in 2 months, and there's going to be a capacity problem, which is now going to affect this project in your portfolio. That's just not doable by human beings, right? And so
Well, not
there are,
one, sure.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they were
there
gonna have a
are
lot
motiv-
of people.
but like I said, to your point, and I don't take it as any kind of criticism at all. It's hard to differentiate when people are saying like, well, what do you mean? What is your AI? So to be clear, our AI would fall under the the guise of an expert system, like I said, and utilizing some of those other components or categorizations of AI in that process, but it is a white box interpretable solution to deliver a discrete answer to a user and doesn't hallucinate, I guess is probably the
Hey, so let me just repackage it for
yeah.
anyone who's listening to this, right?
And I may have geeked out of it a little too much on that, so sorry if I did.
I think I followed you. I think I followed you. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, right? The Chat GPT style AI is ones that take a lot of liberty in delivering the answer to the question, right? It's a little bit hit or miss, and the result of what they give you could be wildly off from what you're looking for, depending on a lot of variables that you don't control. What you're talking about is, this is my problem. I've written rules in order to actually solve my problem. And now I'm using all of the resources that we have available today to give me a definable answer over and over and over again, because I have the directions already laid out to get to where I'm going.
That is exactly
I like
that's a great synopsis. And that last part that you talked about goes into the category called reactive systems, right? Reactive systems are great because they produce, just as you said, a reliable, consistent result. And I use ChatGPT. It's a great tool, but as sort of one person explained it to me, which I thought was really funny, who's in the art, like in this PhD program, they said, it's like the smartest person but they're a bit of a pathological liar. Like they're really good at making shit up when they don't actually have the right answer. And any product that right below it says these answers may be wrong, please check. I mean, like I said, it's a great tool, but we don't have the luxury of doing that if we're going to say we're forecasting this project's going to be late 14 days and you have a capacity problem with this employee. And if they were to go to look into that and go, well, none of that's true. Like, why would you say that? I have no idea why you're saying this is going to be late.
That doesn't sound good to me. I have a quick story, and then we'll get on to the next part. But in Pennsylvania here, unlike Chicago, I'm sure I've never been pulled over in Chicago, but now that I've said that, I'm sure it'll happen. Unless you're the state police, you can only use a stopwatch and white lines on the road. That's how they pull people over. Okay.
No kidding.
No kidding. So
I can tell you definitively they have more tools than that in Chicago.
So when somebody says that in their side view mirror, where it says objects may appear closer than they exist, that they clocked you in behind them, going between white lines and a stopwatch, I would say that sounds a little bit not exact, right? I mean, so when you're saying, hey, these answers may not be right, you have to go and fact check them. I mean, that's not good if that's what you're putting into your final answer.
It's okay if you're trying to write an email to a friend to let them down that you're not going to be able to make it to their wedding. Like, who cares if it's a little soft around there? And they're not going to make up anything that's going to be a problem there. Once again, are you expecting a discrete answer? It's a much bigger problem if you're trying to balance a budget or you need, like I said, a discrete mathematical. And once again, that's what's great about these domain-specific solutions that can solve that. And at some point, George, the generalized models are going to be able to step in and attach to the domain-specific white box interpretable solutions. And I think, that's when you talk about like, where's AI going to go? That's going to be really, really cool. That's going to be a big jump up. It's going to be, they're doing tuning around specific models in there to get more accurate information, to get more detailed information, but ultimately harvesting data from a lot of the domain-specific solutions as well. So, I can trust this data. When you're talking about healthcare outcomes, obviously something very critical. There's a lot of domain-specific stuff in AI around healthcare. They obviously cannot trust or have the risk of hallucinating on a diagnosis or making
For
medication
sure.
recommendations. Like, if you think about, pharmaceuticals is obviously a really clear example where they, that's got to be handled very specifically and very, very accurately.
And carefully, for sure. All right. So let's get back to like the core thing that your company solves for. So, it's funny. I was at a football game. I was at the Eagles Tampa Bay game this Sunday. My Eagles got embarrassed, but that's a side topic. And I was there with a bunch, two MSPs and a guy from MSP land, and like you would think that this vertical, this segment of that I call the sandbox, MSP IT land, very mature, right? Everybody's going towards the same thing. One of the two guys just made the shift into managed services. Like they're now just converting a lot of their product and break fix guys into managed services just now, right? In 2020.
Okay.
The other guy, only 30% of his business was managed services. 40% of his business was product resale, right? Now, when I say product, I'm not just saying a box with a computer and a monitor and a screen. I'm talking about could be SaaS products, subscription, stuff like that. Inevitably, in both of their businesses, project and one-time based revenue was a large block of how they generated their business. So I don't care what company that you would categorize as an MSP, for the lack of a better definition, IT services and managed services. Like, even if the majority of your revenue, which we were made to believe is what happens in this segment, right? North of 50% of your revenue is the same reoccurring monthly, annual reoccurring revenue. And then there's some product in there because naturally, things like Microsoft and all the other pieces come in. But then there's project. You have to do things in order to get people on the right road, right? I have not found many MSPs, maybe count them on my hands, who are like, we do no project work. It's all, you buy our plan, and once you're on the plan, you're on the plan. Everybody has to do some sort of project work. That being said, back to the parallel that I think you laid out very nicely, which is, hey, there's general AI, but then there's domain-specific information, and like, can they tie in? Well, a lot of the products in MSP land try and be a little bit of everything, and they're not good at any one thing, okay? I would argue this category that we're about to talk about, project management, is where everybody has run into it's not great. We use it because it's there. We have to invoice for it, but we struggle dealing with the system rather than the system working for us.
Right.
So I've heard that on a regular for 20 something years. It really hasn't changed, and there's been some new players in the market and they're okay at it, but again, they're solving a larger problem, to which this is just one cog in the wheel. However, when you relate it back to how are these companies in MSP land, however many there are, I've heard a number of 400,000 MSPs worldwide. Okay, if that's real, great. Every single one of them has a double-digit percentage of their business that is project revenue. So if you look at the need, everyone has it, and mileage varies.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got some research coming out. We had engaged a third-party organization that's in the space to kind of conduct a survey in the process. 70% of the market that they interviewed and talked to, and the business leaders said, hey, we can't use the project management tools inside of the solutions. Like, they're fine, it's just insufficient, it's causing too many problems for us. Nearly 50% of those owners felt that poor project management was significantly impacting their margins. So this totally, your sense or sentiment about this, because this is important to us, right? As we're going into this segment going, hey, what's the headspace? These solutions are out there, they have PM, but overwhelmingly it points to what you were saying. And it's a really difficult problem to solve. It seems on the surface like maybe it's not a difficult problem, but there is a massive number of details associated with dealing with structured work. And as I said before, you have to take a different approach with automation. Otherwise, it's not, they could create great tools. There's a human limitation around getting that work done. And it's the same thing, George, around break fix. right? So you were to say like, what are you guys trying to do? And we're trying to do what one of our customers said. They said, hey, you're like RMM for projects for us. It's the same. You guys are kind of doing the same thing that RMM did because it was an older business that had been around a long time. And they said, we got RMM. It allowed us to increase the span of control of our engineers. It kind of up-leveled their skills. It reduced the risk. It lowered the cost of operations. It improved margins. And they said, you guys are automatically monitoring our projects. You're remediating those. It's increasing our span of control around this. You're identifying risks early. Like it's sort of the exact same, that cost justification for us is it's the exact same thing. And they saw that, and that's they said we now look at like a lot of these tasks and projects are like endpoints. We have as many project tasks as we do endpoints, and they're so much more likely to blow up than an endpoint is. So we loved that analogy, and obviously it was driven by a customer saying, and we talked to several other customers, and they went, "Yeah, I guess it is like that. That does make sense." But you've got to take that RMM concept to the work, right? Which is you got to monitor it and its relationship to the rest of the graph, the network of work associated with it, where those risks lie, alert people early so they can fix it so it doesn't blow up on them,
Well, I mean, big picture, zoom out, right? As a business, you can either insource a combination of insourcing and outsourcing things, right? Like if I go to a provider who can do some of these projects for us, or I can shift that burden onto somebody else, they still have the problem. You just moved it down the line, right? Your hope is that they can do it on budget and more efficiently than you can internally, right? Which is the same argument for security work, right? Most MSPs do not have very security, knowledge specific people in their MSPs. They outsource to security professionals who are offering it as a service because they don't think they have the ability to do it any better internally. So like there's a combination of that, right? Like I can go to vendors, use their professional services lanes and say, hey, this customer needs to get to this outcome. Give us a price. I'm now shifting it off to you. And other than checking in with you, your problem. We'll pay you when the job's done, kind of thing. However, they're not perfect either, right? They need a little bit of management as well. The rest of it is, hey, I have people in my MSP. Most MSPs are small businesses. They're not very large enterprises. Although they're out there, but that's not the rule. It's the exception, in my opinion. And so the people who are doing the project work are not just project dedicated people in a lot of cases. They're doing a lot of things, and every hour of the day could be a different hat that they're wearing. Yeah. And so inevitably what happens is somebody drops the ball somewhere. Something doesn't show up on time. Something doesn't get done when it's supposed to. The communication that was supposed to happen across inside and to the outside the organization didn't happen. Somebody gets upset, and then we like put the fire out. I mean, that is in a microcosm what happens, in my opinion.
Well, for sure, that's what happens, and getting the early alert around that is the key to either fixing it and resolving it, or being embarrassed and getting the phone call from the customer. And I think one of the big issues that is really frustrating for leadership is, hey, it's embarrassing when we miss on the delivery of a project because it undermines the confidence of our customer, because their attitude is, how did you not know this? Like, what else are you missing? I'm trusting you to do cyber and all my networks, but you guys couldn't get straight that an engineer was supposed to show up today? Or why am I calling you about a project that's late? Why did I, as the customer, like, how did you guys not know this was going to be late? And we've gotten a lot of customers now that it came around that one point. They said, I am tired of getting embarrassed and being surprised because we dropped the ball on a project. And to your point, George, they have engineers and project coordinators, maybe, and a lot of our customers say, look, I can't get PMs. I can't afford to get PMs. I have what I'll call accidental project managers or citizen project managers in my business. And so, a big part of our solution, we've got, one of our AI agents, Carmen, guides people through the remediation and has little learning lessons to kind of guide and teach people, hey, you need to do this with the plan. You need to look at this. You need to make this change. You've got a risk here. Here's how you can remediate that risk, because they're not formally trained. They don't know what these things are, right? So guiding them and alerting them to let them sort of self-fix, same thing, elevates their capabilities, right? Augments their capabilities. And we talk a lot about ours. So we said, hey, look, it's all we want it to be supervised. We're not trying to replace people. We're trying to supervise in the process so you can focus on the qualitative relationship part of your business. Because to me, I got asked this question. I was on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and I said, this is always going to be a relationship business. These customers are going to buy from their partner because they trust them. They trust the relationship, and they believe there's fidelity in what they're going to deliver and suggest for them. And if technology can facilitate grunt work that they'll make mistakes on or screw up on, that's a really good thing for AI and technology to do, so they can focus on the relationship. But minimizing errors and risks that seem obvious is a really critical thing. And the small, like you said, the smaller businesses suffer from this more. I'll tell you, George, one of the challenges we have, like the mid and large size businesses, it's super easy for them to cost justify the solution. Like, oh, it makes total sense. My God, we save one customer, this pays for itself tenfold, and you're reducing, and we're massively increasing the number of projects we can manage with the same number of PMs. But the really small MSPs are going, oh, it's an extra spend, right? That's coming right out of my margin and process. But it's like giving them, a fraction of a body that's going to make them experts around something. And that's a big part where some of the smaller ones go, like, I don't want to hire a PM. I can't afford to hire a PM. You're kind of delaying that cost for me until I get to another level of spend in that process, like you said, because it's, what, and I'd be interested in your opinion on this, George. Like, what do you see happening, with, this is a very M&A centric industry and business, and there are economies, we see sort of economies of scale for the larger players. To us, I see that, when you talk about the volume, it is because of relationships. Will the relationship component endure on this, on the, smaller size of the business, where you've got a couple of folks, 3 to 5 folks, individual folks? I've got a brother. He's a one-person MSP. My oldest brother's a one-person MSP today. He does endpoint management. It's all word of mouth, right? He never wanted to scale his business. Wanted to do it.
And there's a lot of successful one-man MSPs out there. So the micro MSP or the boutique MSP, absolutely nothing wrong with that, by the way. And I've seen very successful people in that realm. Here's the reality. We were in Denver last week. We did MSP Community Minds, and we did some activities around it. And I had a couple people in the room of varying sizes. And that's kind of the best part of any community, right? You get different people's point of view, depending on where they're at geographically, and like the size of their business and the type of clientele that they're usually after. A little bit of a scale to that, right? There's a little bit of a rainbow to the spectrum of who goes after who. That being said, I had some people at that table and kind of like a forum type atmosphere who were like, we are winning business not because we're bringing new cool blinking lights to the table, but just because the bar is so low by the big guys that by just answering the phone and showing up on time, they will pay more to do business with us. Like, that's how low the bar is. And I'm like,
okay, oh, that's fascinating.
And to that customer and to that MSP, I was like, what's the type of business that you would go after? Not small. They were dealing with medical, regional hospitals, like not small, not enterprise organizations, not super small organizations, kind of midway in between that. And I was just like, is the bar really that low? Like, that low. Like, literally, they're just like, the fact that you answer your phone just is amazing to us. And I'm like, did the cable internet industry, right? And I'm in Philly, and sorry if you're a Comcast employee, but I mean,
yeah, I'm not. I suffer with Comcast too. Yeah.
And it's like, hey, my modem is down, and they're like, okay, we need to send somebody out. And I'm like, okay, cool. When? And they're like, well, we can send somebody between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll just be home all day. And then you get an alert saying that the person stopped by and nobody was there. And you're like, I've been here all day. I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody came. And then, like, all of a sudden we repeat this until somebody actually shows up, to the point where a campaign went out saying, we'll pay you a gift card if we don't show up when we say we're supposed to. And I'm like, this is what we're talking about. The bar, an example, the bar has been like lowered to like not okay. And so if you can deliver okay, or even good, not great, just good, you're winning business. So back to your question of, does the relationship still matter? For sure it does. And like I've seen, back to the example of this MSP from this conversation last week, they're like, we are charging more than big, to your point, larger players that have more resources, that have more marketing dollars. But the reason they went with us is we literally, they felt like we would deliver them better service than the bottom.
Trust. It's trust. Yeah, it comes back to that issue of trust. Thank you. Yeah, that to me, I think this industry is always going to be about the handshake with those people, like trusting, like, are you going to protect us and keep us up and running and like make me feel, because we're going to trust, obviously when you do that for almost nearly, I would say 98% of businesses now, having their technical infrastructure up and running is, as vital as their brain or their heart and their business. And so they're placing a lot of trust in somebody. So how do you manage and, have fidelity? Deliver on time, do what you're saying you're going to do, manage and be responsive, right? Those are all really critical things.
And listen, I've talked to hundreds of probably thousands of MSPs in my 20-ish years here in the sandbox. Good one that sold and was very successful, had a great outcome on his exit, and he's now started a new business. But he's like, listen, you have a couple of shots where you can screw up and still have an okay relationship before it gets to, we're going to try somebody else because we don't think that you're reliable, right? So like to that end, and back to this conversation, the communication part of this is a major cog in the wheel. Like if you notify someone that something is off track proactively, that's probably okay. And you can probably, survive that situation, assuming it's not happening over and over again. But if you're having to deal with it after the fact and they're coming to you rather than the inverse, the idea that you're the professional and that you can get the job done starts to break down, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure. We had a customer say on their project work, their CSAT scores went from mid 60s to the high 90s. And we said, oh, is it because they said, well, it's not necessarily because we're delivering on time every time anymore, but we're giving them a lot of notice and making them understand it was a supply chain issue or was this. And that just gives us credibility. So the customer will work with us.
Over communicate. Yeah. Over communicate. So I'm going to ask you this one last question because I know we got a few minutes left.
Yeah.
I've been constantly asked, or I've heard the question asked, like, well, we're going to try and put AI into the workflow of our MSP because then we need less people. And then like our customers just got to communicate with the machine. And like that will get them the same or better with, less costs. And I'm like, guys, I mean, are we forgetting the fact that like how many times do you even just call into the credit card company and like the system, it's too loud and you're trying to talk to it, or the airline, phone number, and it's too loud. And you're just repeating yourself over and over again to the point where you're just like, agent, zero, get me to a human being.
Representative.
Yeah, like if that's where we're going with this, I don't think that's a good outcome. I think we lose, right? Like you need to realize, and I'm not saying that there is not a future where the technology gets better. Fine, and I'm sure it will. But there's a reason McDonald's did a pilot where they switched the drive-through person with the AI bot at the menu, and they ripped it out and went back to human beings in the states that they were trialing this in after 60 days and like that's a very defined use case. Like you want to say domain specific,
right?
Here's the menu, it's fixed. Like what do you want and in what quantity? Like it's very rigid, right? Yeah. And like that failed. And they went back to the human being. So what does that tell you? Like for today, I'm not sure it's there yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And I think the component is how can you sort of put a Tony Stark suit on people so they can have better capabilities, right? It is about augmenting the human experience, not replacing it. And that was a really good point that Komatsu made to us when they were talking about, hey, we believe AI and automation in the realm of construction equipment should be about keeping humans safe, going into dangerous places they don't want to go into, but not replacing, augmenting, and increasing efficiency of and expertise of. And that was, as they went through, we indoctrinated a lot of that as well. So we always talk about it's a supervised autonomous process because to your point, George, there's so many subtleties that occur and the human does need to be involved in that. And like I said, but there's there's a lot of busy work that can be taken off of their hands so they can focus on the relationship.
I'm all for it. And listen, we're as a bubble in the overall technology realm, we will pivot as things change. But today, on October 1st, 2024, like, let's be practical about what's available today and how good it is.
And
I like the fact that what you've done is you're like, listen, unless you're going to hire people who are going to go and do all this minutia work underneath the scenes and make sure that's right all the time, which is going to take a lot of human being time that you don't have to spend, let's use that compute power to solve that so that you can keep the relationship communication line going. And I agree that that's a better approach than let's just try and replace a human being, because to your point, I think that within reason, being smarter about where you're spending your resources is a good thing. Going too far into the extreme, and this is just life lesson, I guess, like, usually fails.
Yeah, jumping the shark, so to speak, right? Yeah, they got to be careful. Human beings kind of suck at probability and math, so that's a really good thing for computers to do. And it rarely makes a mistake in those areas where humans make a lot of them. Those are, to me, we always look at it and go, these are really good domains, right? These are really good. Computers rarely fail around probability and math and discrete math issues, and human beings make tons and tons of mistakes in those areas. This feels like a safe domain to live in, to give accurate information around. But
no, that is.
I also think having AI be politicians compared to the politicians we have might also be a good thing, because even if they were to make mistakes and do stuff, I think it would probably still be a better outcome. But that's another conversation altogether.
You're right, and we'll have that over a beer at probably IT Nation or something. Me and you will go down that.
Sounds good. I like that.
Where do people find more information, Mike, about Moovila, your MSP, specific program, and all of the things around how that, the integrations and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's all on our website, moovila.com, moovila.com. And you can see about the products, and there's tutorials where you can kind of go through the product and the process, and videos and details and all, kind of the versions. And there is an MSP specific version that comes with these bi-directional interfaces with ConnectWise, Halo, and coming soon Autotask. So lots and lots of detail out there, and happy to get on the phone with anyone to talk further about what we do. And George, thanks so much for giving us the time to talk on the show today.
Happy for you to jump on, Mike. Always love talking to people who have figured out a way to make something better in the sandbox. I still think that, community approach is the best way, because, like, you're never going to know everything, and somebody's always coming up with a good idea. That's where, crowdsourcing, an answer is usually better than you trying to figure it out on your own. But I digress. To each their own. Thank you for jumping on. I know you got a lot of stuff to do on your normal day, so spending an hour with us was great. Guys, this session was absolutely recorded. We're going to post it on YouTube, on the sessions page of MSPinitiative.com. If you are headed to these events, we're in that gauntlet time. Like, if you're going to IT Nation, for example, why don't you reach out to Mike ahead of time and just let him know, hey, like, I'm going to hit your website, but I'd love to chat with you at the, maybe you and me and George can talk about that, AI politics thing. Who knows? But bottom line is, I love the banter time. I think I get the most out of it. Maybe it's a Northeast Philly, Philly thing, but I digress. Can't wait for it. Guys, thanks for watching. And Mike, talk to you in a little while.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thanks, George. Bye-bye.